Have you ever approached an animal out in the wild and tried to get them to come closer to you? What usually happens? In my experience, they usually run away, or if they're kind of used to humans, they might kind of peek around outside of things and have a little bit of a dance with you, where they get a little bit closer. If you get closer, they start to edge away, and it's this back and forth, but they never feel quite comfortable with you. I'm going to get to how this relates to your ex in a little bit, but sometimes these animals, if you walk by the same place over and over again, they start to get a little bit used to you. They may come a little bit closer, and they may even walk right up to you if you get really familiar with them. As tempting as it may be to think so, your ex is not an animal though, so why don't we move a little bit closer to human form and think about babies. Babies sort of do the same thing, right? They kind of like go and walk away from you, and then they look back at you for security, and you kind of know that they're coming back. They're not like the animals that'll run off because they know who we are. They want us to rely on. Whether we're talking about animals or babies, there's an element of fear involved in getting close to somebody and getting intimate with somebody. When it comes to animals who haven't grown up around humans, their intimacy level is not close. They don't feel comfortable when a human is around them. When it comes to babies, they're comfortable with family members, but they're probably not so comfortable around strangers, and they'll turn towards family members for protection. What I'm talking about here are different emotional systems in our bodies, neurological systems that we all have for fear when something is unfamiliar to us that drives us away from intimacy. We also have the care system where we bond with people, where we feel more confident when we're around them. We feel safe and we feel secure and we feel a sense of love. So we've covered animals and we've covered babies, and although it may be tempting to think so, your ex is not an animal or a baby. Yes, there could be some growth that they need to do. They may need to mature a little bit. It's possible that that's true for you too. But let's cover adults now, because that's what your ex is and that's what we want to know about. So let's talk about your ex, your adult ex. Your adult ex has these systems still in them. Everybody has these fear systems and the care systems, among other neurological systems in our bodies. When it comes to intimacy, that's when they tend to show up. Unlike animals or babies, humans are better at controlling these systems, and we're able to have communities, friends, and intimate lovers. When we're looking to understand intimacy and whether or not your ex is moving on, in other words, if they're intimate with you, there are a few different things that we can look at. Before I get into this though, I just want to make clear that this sense of moving on does not necessarily mean that they're over you. It doesn't mean that they're not in pain. It doesn't mean that they can't come back. It doesn't mean that things are final. There's a lot of different ways that people move on. It's not always a linear path, and sometimes people start to move on, change their mind, and come back. Just like the babies that run away from mom, look back and say, uh-oh, I'm a little too far, and they want to go back. Now that's one way that we can measure intimacy, actually. Proximity. How close is your ex physically to you? Like, are they in the same bed as you? Have they moved out into a different room? Have they moved out of the house? Are they far apart from you? Do they spend a lot of time at work? Do they hang out with friends instead of you? Physically, are they close to you? That's one way to look at intimacy. There's also psychological intimacy. Are they loving towards you? When they are physical, are they intimate? Like, do they touch you? Are they having conversations with you that are on an emotional level, that are deeper than just, hey, what's up? Do you want to grab some food? Like normal everyday to-day stuff. Do they actively show an interest in who you are? These things define intimacy, whether you're in a relationship or not, whether you broke up with somebody, you just got into a relationship. Usually when you first get into a relationship with somebody, you get really close. It's normal to be really intimate, but over time, you drift apart. That's normal. It's normal to drift apart a little bit, but in relationships, there has to be an active part on both people to keep things together, to keep trying, to keep being interested in the other partner, and to stay physically close to some extent. When somebody says that they want to break up, that's a pretty clear indicator that they're moving on to some extent. They're moving away. That doesn't mean that they won't come back. It doesn't mean that things are over for good, but it's a sign that they request intimacy to be less. It's too much for them to be intimate, or they don't feel comfortable. Remember the fear we were talking about? Or maybe they're seeking care in other places where they feel more secure. It could be that they just feel drifted apart and that feeling's not returning for whatever reason. There's a lot of reasons why people break up. What it really comes down to is, if you want to know if your ex is moving on, look at their actions. Are they spending less time with you? Are they talking to you less often? Are they talking to you about things that are not important, that are not emotional, that are not deep and meaningful? Are they spending time with somebody else in an intimate way? those are all key indicators that they're moving on to some extent. I think it's important to know what you think. Do you think that your ex is moving on? Leave that down below in the comments.